we're going to be looking at a little bit of Adobe Premiere Pro. We're not going to go into too much depth. We're going to go kind of look into the user interface, do a little bit of editing, that kind of stuff, and look a little bit at the 180-degree rule. So, first of all, what I've done so far, and obviously I'm right into the Adobe Premiere Pro screen, is I've obviously opened up the program. I've clicked the icon, which normally brings up a new project window. Now, I can't actually show you this, as when I try to share screen, it automatically minimizes that. But basically, in a new project window, it's as the name suggests, you create a new project. So you give the project its title, you change and alternate through different settings, what your scratch disks are going to be. So scratch disks are effectively where all your assets, render files are going to go, where your saving destination is going to go, and things like that. So that was actually on a previous screen. And yes, so we are in the main Adobe Premiere Pro screen at the moment. So, to give you guys a brief introduction to Adobe Premiere Pro. Actually, before I do, one thing I will point out is, in addition to this, for all of you editors out there really wanting to get into Adobe Premiere Pro, or wanting to excuse me, wanting to boost your knowledge, boost your skills on it, I do highly recommend the main Adobe website. There are a number of amazing tutorials on there, on Premiere, on Photoshop, on After Effects, and different things like that with assets. By assets, incidentally, what I mean are things like your footage and audio files. So just so we're clear with everyone, that's what I mean when I talk about assets. Okay, so you've got a number of different panes, also known as panels, at the very, very top. Hold on, bear with me, my Zoom is going a little bit crazy. So I'll show you very, very quickly what kind of different things you can do. So assembly, for example, you can start to actually populate all of your assets into this main window, as an example. Now, from my own personal experience, I tend to actually jump straight into, I'll wait for my Zoom to go. I jump straight, if I'm honest, probably shouldn't be doing this, but I jump straight into editing, as I'm used to kind of like the old-fashioned user interface of Adobe Premiere Pro. And it's still very, very easy, very, very simple to import footage in this project window over here, bottom left-hand corner. Going back to the panels, once you've, let's say, once you've populated your timeline, so that's basically your edit, you can switch to color correction. I'm just going to move my Zoom out of the way. And as you have probably already guessed, these panels are how can I put it, preloaded, pre-set up to whatever you want to do. So the one we're going to be looking at today is obviously editing, but color is for color correction. You can have all sorts of different adjustment levels that are populating on the right-hand side. Same sort of thing. Ooh, my Premiere is being a little bit difficult, bear with me, as I've obviously got Zoom open as well. So it's a kind of a draw on the RAM, unfortunately. Effects, okay? So all of these, I should say, effects you can actually find, which is what we're going to stick to tonight, within your editing panel. But this, again, it's kind of like preloaded, it's preset if you're specifically working with your effects. So all of your effects, like really cool sound transitions, or dissolves, those kind of different things, fades in, fade out, those kind of different things, you'll find them over here on the right-hand side. Just wait for Zoom to jump out, and so forth, so forth, so forth. So we've got audio, we've got graphics, libraries, and all sorts, okay? So they are your panels, effectively. Like I said, for tonight, wait for Zoom to jump out the way. It's quite frustrating, just so everyone is aware. Whenever I go a little bit too far to the top, Zoom automatically pops down, so I can't get back automatically to Premiere. So I have to wait for Zoom to jump out the way. Anyway, editing. So the editing panel. Bottom left-hand side, as I was saying, I've got a few laughs over there. Bottom left-hand side, you've got, there we go, you've got all of your different assets. Then, top left, you've got what's called the source monitor. That's where basically, if you click on an asset, or you can drag and drop an asset, you can basically preview it, you can start to cut it down, and then from the source monitor over here, you can drag it onto what's called the timeline or sequence panel over here. That's fundamentally where your edit is going to be, something that eventually you'll be ready to export. Top right, you've got what's called your program window, or some editors refer to it as the canvas window. That's where you effectively preview your edit. So a good way to actually teach and explain the user interface of your editing panel within Adobe Premiere Pro is think of it as a sideways Z, okay, in terms of your workflow. Let me explain. So imagine a Z is, from your angle, it'll be something like this. You flip it to its side, that's effectively your workflow. So you begin with your project, source, monitor, all the way down to your sequence, then finishing off with a preview of your sequence. Okay, it's a really cool method to remember the workflow of Adobe Premiere Pro. Just a nice little tip for all of you. Okay, so let's begin then, ladies and gents. I've already preloaded a number of different assets on there. I must say as well, they are relatively basic. Okay, we're only going to be doing a little bit of basic editing to give you guys the flavor of Adobe Premiere Pro. I did record these on Zoom because obviously we have all shifted to online distance learning, and we've got internet connectivity, I should say, a bit of a mouthful, internet connectivity limitations. So all of these I've recorded on Zoom. Okay, so first thing, I can drag, oh, there we go. That is not doing what I wanted to do. I can either double click, so you can see my amazing face on the left-hand side. I lie, it is not flattering at all. It's quite embarrassing, but we'll make do, shall we? Excuse me. Right, just gonna make sure my sound levels are up. I'd advise all of you just to double check your sound levels. You should be able to hear me loud and clear. So this shouldn't be too loud. Let's quickly, just very, very quickly preview what I've got here in the OK So asset. So one way I can do that, I can just click play here or hit the space bar if this particular window is selected. So I'll try hitting the space bar. Okay, so can you actually tell me why the 180-degree rule is really important? Amazing, Oscar-worthy performance, round of applause, I think. No, not really. Right, okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to select with what are called in and out markers. I'm going to select what I want, okay? I'm going to begin by setting an in marker over here, hitting play for a short while. Okay, so can you actually tell me why the 180-degree rule is really important? There we go. I think that would be a nice position. Oh, there we go. My mouse jumps a little bit because it's quite sensitive today. I don't know what's actually wrong with it. So yes, as you can see, I've set a couple of in and out points, in point, out point over here. Now what I can do, refer back to the sideways Z I was talking about, typical editing, and I'm going to click, hold, drag, drop onto my timeline. Now I'm really glad I had this clip mismatch warning show up. Did I have that intentionally? I wonder. Okay, what this means for all of you ladies and gentlemen, it's a very, very common thing that happens in Premiere, okay? That is effectively because my sequence does not match the parameters of my footage. And Adobe Premiere Pro is very clever in that way. The algorithms will automatically detect what kind of footage I have. And in this instance, it's asking me, this clip does not match the sequence's settings, change sequence settings to match the clip's settings, okay? 95% of the time, you actually want to click change sequence settings, okay? The other 5%, I tell a lie, the other 5% you should actually be higher. You would click keep existing settings. That's because you should know how you've shot your footage, okay? For instance, have you shot on a DSLR camera, 1080p? Have you shot on a RED camera at 8K? You should have already preloaded these parameters in the new project window I was telling you about, but unfortunately couldn't show you earlier. So in this instance, I'm just going to click change sequence settings. So what I've done here, ladies and gents, is I've dictated, as I'm a dictator, I've told Adobe Premiere Pro to match, there we go, to match my sequence settings. Basically, remember this is your sequence. Match sequence settings to my footage, okay? Right, okay. I should jump back just for 1 second, come to think of it, because I have already preloaded a number of different sequences. So I'm actually just going to jump back and show you that for 1 second. So to actually edit your footage in Adobe Premiere Pro, you'd want to create a new sequence. Very, very simple. You'd go, let me get out of this. New item. Bear with me, my cat wants to get out now. I will be 2 seconds. There we go. Yeah, I'm getting a few laughter again. She is lovely. She really is, just a bit needy. Right, where was I? Okay, yes. Down here, you'll see a new item little icon. Click on that. New sequence. And over here is another method of dictating to Premiere, telling Premiere what your sequence settings are going to be. Note on the left-hand side the number of different the number of different parameters that you can actually select. So for example, let's just minimize HDV video and click digital SLR, which is the mainstream really of indie filmmakers, promotional filmmakers, those kind of different organizations. So over here, you can tell Premiere what kind of sequence setting you want. So for example, if you shot at a full HD resolution on a DSLR, so that'll be 1080. If you shot at progressive, make a note of that. P is for progressive as opposed to interlaced. And then last of all, you've got your frame rate, okay? Now, these are things that, as I was saying a second ago, Premiere will intelligently, according to its algorithms, detect what footage you're trying to dump into your timeline, I should say, and prompt you with the mismatch warning. Okay, let's jump back into this for 1 second, so I can show you a variety of different. Ooh, there we go. Oh, yeah, my mouse is being a little bit crazy tonight. Apologies for this. So you'll notice at the very, very top, you've got ARRI. So if any of you are fortunate enough to shoot on Alexa, on a mirror or anything, you've already got ARRI sequence presets populated. Going down the bottom, you've even got red R3D files and all sorts. Okay. For argument's sake, just so all of you are aware of how to do this, let's set up a high definition video 1080p, 25 frames per second sequence, and you'll notice all the settings over here. Let's give it a name, actually. That was a bit silly of me. Let's call it Test 2, as I think I've already got another one called Test 2. Test 2 is over here. So you will also notice that I've got a number of different sequences, pre-done. But that's effectively how you get started. Okay, don't you worry as well. Once I've shown you this Adobe Premiere Pro introduction, all of you will have the chance to ask me questions. Right, so we're going to start messing about. We're going to start editing within our sequence, but we really can't see the footage that we have. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag this a little bit to about here, maybe. Yeah, we'll keep it here for the time being, so we can actually see what's populated. Just going to expand. Really cool thing about Premiere as well, ladies and gents, all your panels on here are moldable, as it were. You can move things wherever you want. You can open things up. So let me show you. I'm just opening up the first audio, how can I put it? I've completely lost what I was going to say. The first audio sequence over here, track I should say, apologies for that. There we go, and I've just opened up the video track. So it's quite useful in that sense, okay? Now, because I've got my timeline sequence selected, you notice it's in blue, 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 blue. If I hit spacebar, the mouse is going a bit crazy. If I hit spacebar, so can you tell me why the 180-degree rule is really important? Cool. You can start to preview your actual sequence in your program or canvas monitor I was talking to you about a second ago. Cool. All right then. Just going to close this up a little bit so we can all see what we're doing. All I'm doing here, ladies and gents, is I'm getting ready to put another clip on, as obviously, you know, this makes obviously a very interesting film. No, it's incredibly boring. We need to populate the sequence. Now, how do we do that? So I'm going to show you a different way. There we go. So the Yes, I Do Teach film assets that I've got over here in response to my question. So the other way I can edit with Premiere, that's why it's so amazing and so versatile. I don't need to either drag or double click into the source monitor, which is the first way I showed you, but I can do that. What I can do, this is the way I prefer to edit, just me from my own personal point of view. I like to populate the timeline as quickly as possible. Right, let me just close that down a little bit so we can see what we're doing. Right, let's have a quick look at this. Let's go back to the beginning. Oh, sorry, apologies, my mouse is going haywire. Okay, so can you actually tell me why the 180-degree rule is really important? Yes, I do teach film. Oh, apologies for that. There we go. Okay, so just to explain to everyone, this is something that I had previously done, but we can just flick through. It was to a question I had asked myself. As you can see, I'm going from myself to myself. Aren't I interesting? Important is... So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the response I want. Important. Yes, I do teach film. So in essence, the reason why the 180-degree rule is important. There we go, that's the response I want. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring this all the way down. I'm just going to Command Z to show you all of it. Command Z, by the way, ladies and gents, is your typical shortcut for undo. Top tip. If also you're from an avid media composer background, it's well worth your while learning all the shortcuts. Command Z, C, V are your best friends. We'll get to C and V very, very shortly. So I'm going to select what I've got here, and I'm going to bring it down with my selector tool. Let's see where I am. I think I am mid-speech. Is it sort of kind of... Yeah, I'm completely mid-speech. Not a problem at all, because I want to take that from a little bit further. I'll try it maybe from here. Okay, this would be a good moment to actually tell all of you that Adobe Premiere Pro is non-destructive editing. Okay, so unless I go into the folder where all of my files are and physically hit delete, go into my recycle bin, reformat my hard drive, do all of that, what I'm doing here within Premiere, I'm not deleting footage. All I'm doing is I'm fundamentally telling Premiere what pieces of footage I want from X, Y, or Z places within my footage. Right, let's have a quick look. So all right, so I begin there. There's a slight so. I'm just going to bring it down a little bit. I'm going to move that a little bit to the left, closer there, as I think we're very, very much ready to do a cut. So yeah, that seems a reasonable place to do a cut. I'm just going to drag. This is just click, hold, drag. You'll notice as well here, ladies and gents, that Premiere intelligently snaps to the closest locations. Very, very useful tool. You can turn it off. My recommendation is to keep it on. It's quite a lifesaver. Okay, right. 180-degree rule is really important. So in essence, the reason why 180-degree rule is important. That's a reasonable cut. I suppose what I can do here, I can fine tune it a little bit more. So my preferred way of doing this, one way that you can do this is to expand your timeline even more. You can even move it around left and right. And your playhead, this is called your playhead, by the way. Rule is really important. Okay, it does hold on my amazing face, not, for a little bit too long. So I'm gonna cut it back a little bit. Rule is really important. Not too bad. Not too bad at all. Okay. Degree rule is really important. So in essence, the reason... Yeah, not that much of a bad cut. I should also tell you at this point, ladies and gents, that you can, I'll show you right now, you can move this clip down to video 1 timeline. This is your first video track, I should say, not timeline. The whole thing is your timeline. But my preferred method of editing, and it keeps things quite organized, is to have your shots separated on different tracks. Okay, you'll notice here. Let's call this, for argument's sake, shot A. Why the 180-degree rule is really important. So in essence, the reason why the 180-degree rule is... And shot B over here. Okay? Right. Let's have a look at what we've done here. So I've kept things quite simple as well. Let's have a quick preview of the whole thing, ladies and gents. Okay, so can you actually tell me why the 180-degree rule is really important? So in essence, the reason why the 180-degree rule is important is it sort of kind of not only preserves a continuity between two people who are talking, but it also adds the added effect of people talking into sort of like what would be dead space, okay? And it's a very, very standard sort of interview filmmaking technique that you see across in a number of different things, from TV shows, short films, feature films. It's very, very standardized. And yeah, the whole idea is it's supposed to keep things logical. It's supposed to keep things in a way that makes sense for the audience, for them to be able to follow. As if you actually broke the 180-degree rule, it would actually be, it would look quite confusing, okay? And it's something that's been done in a number of different films, like The Dark Knight,
The Shining and Stanley Kubrick, Christopher Nolan, the reason why they wanted to break the 180-degree rules in a couple of scenes there is they wanted to create a little bit of anarchy. They wanted to create a bit of chaos. They wanted to confuse the situation. Now, whether or not it did actually work is, to a certain degree, quite subjective. But yeah, that's fundamentally it.
Cool. All right then. So, as you can probably tell, I'm kind of like interviewing myself here. What would typically be done in an interview technique, in an interview environment, I should say, is to have a reverse shot style of filmmaking, I should say. Okay.
Tell me why the 180-degree rule
so you go from this sort of shot.
So, in essence, the reason why the 180-degree rule is important is it sort of kind of not only preserves a continuity.
Then you could populate it with a reverse shot of myself in this instance, and basically cut it back to this video track, okay? But at the moment, we're gonna stick to something like that. Now, one quick thing, as I know, I think we're getting a little bit pressed for time. One quick thing I'm going to show you is, as these two shots are, my face is quite centralized, okay? I don't really match within the typical rule of thirds ratios, okay? So how would I, let's say, how would I want to improve that? Now, just to jump in at this moment, a good method, a good selling point of ultra high definition film is, got a little bit of back there. Good selling point of ultra high definition film is that within the frame, you can tap, what's called tap, or scale in to that particular frame and basically reframe, okay? Let me show you what I mean. So I've got this selected, okay? Make sure you have that selected. There we go. Double click, don't know if you heard that. That is definitely, and you saw it highlighted within my source monitor. It's definitely within my source monitor. I'm going to go to effects quickly. And I am going to shift. I'll go to that in one moment, actually, bear with me. Go back to the original moment. I'm going to scale my face in somewhat. I'm going to move the position of my face to maybe to something along this sort of line. Okay, might be a little bit too much, might be a little bit too little, but it's just to show you the kind of features that you can utilize within Premiere. Another typical feature that's used quite a lot and quite favored by a number of different filmmakers within Premiere is, by the way, I should jump in at this moment, within the project panel over here, these two little arrows, if I click them, you've got a number of different things. So you'll recall the panel over here, I've got it also to a slightly more limited, I suppose one could argue slightly less user-friendly than using it in the effects panel. I've got my effects over here, okay? Now, you've got audio effects, audio transitions, video effects, video transitions. We're not going to quite go into those today, but one cool thing that I'm going to briefly show you is, let's say you're lazy, okay? Or let's say you've got a tight deadline and you want to add really, really quick color grading, okay? Let's go to cinematic over here. Ooh. Let's open up this project window so we can actually see what we're doing. They're previewed over here fundamentally. So which one are we thinking of? Maybe CineSpace 25, which is already selected. I'm going to drag and drop this effect, not up there. That's my mouse going crazy. And you'll notice that the actual look of the shot has changed. I'll go back to effects 1 second, ladies and gents. I'm going to scroll down within effects. You will see over here what I have done. This is what I've just dragged onto that particular clip. Let me show you the difference. So this will toggle it off and toggle it back on. Okay, immediate improvement. Now, one thing I always do nag and do teach my students is to build your color grade from scratch as much as you can. It's a very, very useful preset if you're in a hurry, you've got a tight deadline or something like so.
Thanks very much for that, Paddy.
You're welcome.
I've been just getting to grips with Premiere Pro the last week or so, just editing a bit of footage, and I'm getting a warning at the moment. I've got a lot of footage on my laptop, but some in an external hard drive.
Yeah.
So once I've unplugged the external hard drive, put that away, when I go back to Premiere Pro, any clips I've loaded in to Premiere Pro come up with a little warning saying that everything's offline. I don't know if there's a quick explanation for that, or that's a bit more advanced.
There is a quick explanation for that. The simplest solution, the answer is you've just unplugged your hard drive. So Premiere Pro is attempting to read the footage from that external hard drive, and it can't because it's unplugged. Now, the way around that is either naturally plug your hard drive back in, or if you've got enough space on whatever laptop or Mac you're using, just copy and paste all of your footage onto your Mac, onto your computer, and you will get a message from Premiere Pro once you try and reload it with the same project file. If the external hard drive isn't selected, it will prompt you to locate the footage. So you'll need to tell it that it's on your computer at XYZ location.
Fantastic. Okay, so yeah, it doesn't hold on to those files in Adobe. So you can't, once you've moved them across, you still need to keep going back to the original source files.
Yes, yeah. Unless, yeah, in a nutshell, yes.
Okay, all right, thank you. That's great.
That's all right, you're welcome.
A question regarding color correction. I have game cams that are strapped to a tree shining down on an animal coming out of den. And so it happens at nighttime, at daytime, sunny days, cloudy days. Is there a color correction that I could just say, you know, select 30 clips and just give me the best, you know, and like an average instead of having to hand correct all 30?
Okay, so my understanding from your question is, just to recap, is let's say you've color corrected one particular clip on your timeline, and to basically, well, effectively copy and paste that color correction, your color correction, onto the rest of your clips on your timeline. Is that more or less correct? Have I understood you?
Right.
Yeah. So let's say you've spent, as many colorists, I should say, do. Let's say you spent a day color correcting one particular clip. Now, the simplest thing is, because you need to also keep an eye, I must say, you need to keep an eye on how those parameters are going to affect all of your resulting pieces of footage. The way I would do it, it's a little bit slower, but still a little bit, it's reasonably fast. I would make sure the clip is selected within my sequence, make sure it's showing up within the source monitor, click on effects. You'll be able to see all your color correction in there. Command C or copy and paste, copy that particular thing, select another clip, copy and paste it within the effects panel. Now, some would say that might be a little bit slower, but at the same time, you do want to keep an eye on the level of, I suppose you could say, color correction you're applying to every single clip, as it may differ. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I didn't know if the software had the ability, if I just selected all the clips, all 30, and just said, give me an average. And that instead of opening and paste, 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 that the software could just magically do it for me?
In all honesty, personally, I've never used that in the aforementioned reason. However, that is not to say that it doesn't exist. Your best bets would, to get a specific answer to that, I would advise you to check out the main Adobe forums. You've got all sorts of amazing editors on there, colorists, and if you actually type in like, keywords of what you're putting in to the Adobe forums, you should be able to find, well, more experienced editors than me, for a start, who'll be able to give you guidance on how to do it. Yeah, that's what I would advise you to do, as I've never used that personally before. So,
Could I ask a second question?
Yeah, of course, shoot.
Okay, so in regards to setting up the sequence for size, I don't know the right word, like 1080p, do you want to set that size up based on what your output is, like going to YouTube for 1080? Is that how I determine the size I'm going to use? Because I've got 3 or 4 cameras all shooting different sizes. So do I pick my output as my determining of my size?
Yes, you would ideally. Having said that, one thing you need to be aware of is when let's say you're exporting 1080p for something that looks amazing, or let's say 4K, something that's shot on red, something that looks amazing, crisp, and etc., etc., etc. For for upload, I should say, onto YouTube. When you upload it, YouTube also has its own compression added to it. Also, so does Google. Vimeo is a lot better, but it does have a little bit of compression, I understand. So you probably will lose a little bit of quality, I should say. So yes, ideally 99% of the time, you'd want your canvas monitor, which is your output monitor, which is going to be your export. You'd want it to match what you'd want to play it back on, as it were. Another tip actually is something I always tell my students is test, 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 test. Always test your exports. Test it on a low quality monitor, and test it on a high quality monitor, test it on a projector, test it on a 4K TV, test it in a variety of different ways. It's actually a very similar thing to the audio industry, how they mix pieces of music, and I'll have really low quality speakers and I'll have also excellent quality speakers. The assumption is that most people, the mainstream, will be using low to mid-budget sort of equipment. So big piece of advice is do test exports.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome, anytime.
All right. Elizabeth, did you want to ask a question? We can't hear you. I think you're on mute, or your audio is not connected. All right. Elizabeth, are you trying to work that out? I'm just going to go to a question in the chat, and then we'll come back to you if you've got a chance there. Raji, excuse me if I pronounced that wrong. Why do you prefer building color from scratch instead of the presets?
That's a very good question, actually. So the presets have been done, I must say, they have been done to an amazing standard. They are excellent, the presets. Why I want Teach to build it from scratch, and why I do it from scratch, is I want to have control over exactly what I'm doing. One of the presets will color grade X piece of footage that looks different to Y piece of footage. They'll correct it to the same sort of level. I'm probably not explaining myself properly. Let's say X piece of footage looks a particular way. The preset will compensate it, let's say 15%. Piece of footage B, it will also compensate it to 15%. It will compensate it to that particular parameter within how it's been designed. Building it from scratch, fundamentally, you have as much control as possible over what you're doing. Having said that, I also like to edit from scratch, but quite often I will dump a Lumetri preset onto what I've done to see if it's improved or to see if it's worse. Worst case scenario, I'll just take it off. So yes, fundamentally, I hope that's answered your question, but you want as much control over your edit, over your footage as possible.
Okay, thanks for that, Paddy.
That's all right.
Elizabeth, you want to try again?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Great, great. This is a question related to the audio that's attached with the video. I have difficulty when I film lots of different people, and so I need to balance their voices to all have the same volume. I can't seem to make that work. Am I doing something fundamentally wrong here?
First things first, I would advise, if you have access to a professional audio piece of software such as Pro Tools, and somebody who knows how to use it as it's quite advanced, that would be the more ideal situation. Adobe Premiere Pro is primarily for visuals, okay? You do have sound tracks, as it were, but it's not specifically designed as a piece of software to be able to mix, to be able to do much within it. Adobe Audition, you can do what's called dynamic linking by right-clicking a piece of a clip, I should say, of your audio within your timeline, dynamically linking it to Adobe Audition. At least you used to be able to do that. And you can do all sorts of wonderful things in Adobe Audition. So those are the first things I would advise. So this is rooted back actually to answer your question in terms of how you've shot. Okay, if you've shot at those particular settings using a DSLR 1080p 25 frames per second, for example, you can match your settings. So within your actual export window, there is a little tick box which is match sequence settings. Okay, let's say you don't want to match sequence settings. Let's say you've got slightly ultra high definition footage, you've got 2K footage, and you want to export at 1080p. Okay, now what you can do is, and I'm working from memory here, I'm visualizing everything that I need to talk to you about. You would set your settings to, first of all, H.264 codec. Although having said that, in the latest version of Premiere 2019 or 2020, I understand that H.265 may be available. And just to segue for a second, H.265 is the latest codec for high def, ultra high def footage. It's very, very good. Same quality, a lot less space. Okay, that's not available, H.264. And there should be a preset for 1080p and whatever frame rate you utilized to shoot with. So I would say get your shooting as close as you can to your final export. So I'm going to assume, 1 second, that you've color corrected the clip that you want to use as a color correction template for another clip. I'm going to assume that. Yes, there is. So if you go into your source panel, so from your point of view, it would be over here, source panel, effects, and make sure that particular clip is selected within your timeline, within your sequence, okay? And fundamentally, as I was saying a little while ago, you would copy and paste those parameters onto another clip. But you need to make sure that the clip you'd want to copy and paste on is selected, okay? And make sure you copy and paste within the effects window, if that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't make sense, I can jump into Premiere and show you. but we'll jump. If Pat, if you could let me know what was the second part of that question.
So Ferrer said, using 2 camera brands, is lumetri color the same as using curves in 3-way color corrector?
I think there are 2 questions in there. So if we look at 2 camera brands for a second, I'm going to assume that the question is, can you, and how, I suppose, how difficult it is to color correct both pieces of footage. So from experience, it really depends on the disparity between each camera. I once had to shoot on a very, very basic 1080p JVC 100 camera, and I had 2 big broadcast quality JVC 700s available to me. There was a quality difference. Having said that, I could still color correct using things actually like brightness and contrast, all of these different tools, brightness and contrast, curves, RGB curves, lumetri curves, and I don't believe I used any lumetri presets. As I was saying a second ago, I wanted complete control over it. And remind me, Pat, please, the third part of that?
Is lumetri color the same as using curves in 3-way color corrector?
So in all honesty, the way Adobe will have designed lumetri curves, I wasn't there, is the simple answer. I don't know exactly what settings that they messed about with to get X particular preset or Y particular preset. However, having said that, I will not be surprised if they applied a load of lumetri S-curves, as that kind of gives you a dynamic contrast between your shadows and your highlights that you do find quite a lot within lumetri presets. So excuse me, to answer your question, I would not be surprised if they utilize those kind of tools. I can't be 100% sure, but I wouldn't be surprised. So I hope all of that's answered your questions.
Still got a few questions. Sorry to keep you guys waiting on these. So Michael's asked, why is it advantageous to separate assets on independent tracks? So
from my own personal experience, and trust me, from depending on like the level of all of your collective experience, you'll want to stay as organized as possible. So for me, the big advantage is if I know that video track 1 is camera A, which was, let's say, an over shoulder shot from here, that's video 1. Video 2 track could be the camera B from here. And video 3 could be my master shot, which could be, for example, here looking at me. So for me, the big advantage is organization, organization, organization. If you have a look at, excuse me, so Gone Girl and Deadpool are 2 notable films that were edited on Adobe Premiere Pro. If you have a Google search at their timelines broken down, you will see that these editors are dealing with layer after layer. By layer, I mean track after track after track after track after 99 tracks in some instances, okay, of whatever it can be. Imagine for 1 second if they had just populated 1 single track. To me, it would have been a lot more chaotic. So yeah, the big advantage is, and big top tip for all of you, stay organized, stay organized.